Hello, everyone. Welcome to Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. Yes, we come week after week to explore this beautiful intersection of psychology and spirituality with the goal to uncover some beautiful and quite timeless wisdom to help all of us have a better life, have achieve better sense of meaning and purpose. And I want to welcome all of you to another episode. And just to, if you don't know me, my name is Marcia Trajano, and we are here to continue this discussion that we started last week. I'm joined by my dear friend and wonderful. I think of you, Marluce, as this wonderful thinker, this person who brings so many insights to the human problem, if you will. And she does that with clarity, warmth, and and her experience. So, Marluce, I propose today we continue our conversation focusing on this I would say, most intimate human experience, which is the relationship with ourselves, right? We started with questions like, who am I? Why do I struggle to value myself? Why does self criticism, this is important, everyone. Self criticism, we are worst inner critic, right? Feel so relentless day after day. And those questions are indeed more common than we imagine to all of us. So, before I ask you to talk about Lucy, let's give us maybe a minute or two to remind all of you of what we discussed last week. So, this is the second part of a two-part series. And in the first episode, we explored the foundation of what we call, and Marlucy, please correct me if I'm wrong, right? The spiritual self-esteem through the lens of Joanna D'Angela's psychology and through also the lens of Spiritist thought. And Marlucy and I talked, and it was just an amazing conversation, right? We begin with the essential question of identity. What am I talking about? What did we talk about really? Well, Marlucy brought some insights and clarification to these distinction that is quite profound, the distinction between ego and the self. So Marlucy here reflected on how the ego is a temporary constructed personality. I'm going to be a little bit academic here, but this is to bring us up to the moment that we're going to talk further. But this personality is temporary, as I mentioned, and is constructed, shaped by what? Our culture, our family, our own wounds, our defense mechanism, and yes, the one that I feel that is the worst of it all, the biggest of those building blocks, the social expectations, right? Where we are inserted culturally and socially. And the ego plays a really important role, but Lucy brought many beautiful metaphors, right? It has this limited perception of reality. And yes, it often mistakes itself for the whole of who we are. Do you remember that, Lucy? I hope you do. So her images, we're talking about Joanna D'Angela's images, bring us the ego as an island in the ocean, or also the gatekeeper of a beautifully vast castle. And those images helped me, and I hoped helped all of you who listened to that episode. I invite all of you to go back to that episode if you haven't. But those images help us to see that the ego, indeed, our ego, is not the center, but rather this doorway through which the self expresses itself. In contrast, Marluce also brought the idea of its counterpoint, right? Point counterpoint. I always think of Joanna as this yin and yang, point counterpoint, but the counterpoint to that idea is the self. And what is the self? As we brought last time, the self is our immortal, divine core. It is the totality of consciousness that number one, reincarnates, but also learns, evolves, and it remains connected to God. We could call it the absolute. And when we draw, or we drew last week from the Spiritist psychology and from Leon Denis and Jungian thought, right, Marluce? We also discussed how remembering this deeper identity help us restore our inner ability or sorry our inner stability, right, our sense of meaning and even dignity for all of us. What did we talk about seriously? Well, when we identify only, and we're all victims of that, prey of that, we identify only with roles, appearances, success, yes, youth, and I'm failing at that, by the way. And speaking of failing, failure, self esteem, which is the topic of today, becomes quite fragile. When we identify with the self, then that sense of worth becomes intrinsic, it becomes easy, it becomes omnipresent, if you will. So we also explored, Marluce, and I'm speaking to you and to our viewers today, our audience, right? We also touch base on the origins of spiritual self-esteem, and Marluce emphasized that our value does not come from achievements of external validation anymore, but from our divine origin as children of God and co creators of our own destiny. So, when we look at that and we look at the concept of reincarnation, it really is this bridge, a bridge of meaning, because it offers a compassionate framework and help us understand our recurring patterns. Also, it helps us understand our talents, our fears, our struggles, and relieves somehow the pressure to be, and I'm going to say air quote here, to be perfect in a single lifetime. So we ended with some psychological distortions that can erode self-esteem, and they are found again in fear, but also when we compare ourselves with the other, right, Mahlusi, in the society that we are immersed, and we're talking about, yes, 21st century really brought this the highest degree, as of we know today, of social media and the vehicles by which it's very present. I'm going to show my mobile device here, where comparison and comparison to a a target that is completely and mostly unachievable. So it's a target of being perfect, and with that, the inability to achieve that level of perfection, whatever that may be. Usually, it is a photo, which means it's all superficial, it's material, right? But then we fall into this terrible sense of shame and welcome, we open the door to a relentless inner critic. So, anyways, I talked too much. Let's go ahead and continue our conversation, Marluce, because the first episode really laid the groundwork for what would I would like to propose today, which is go deeper and perhaps, Marluce, explore how healing unfolds when we practice what we need, right? What we need to feel better, and that is expressed with compassion replacing self-judgment, and that spiritual self-esteem then becomes a lived and shared experience, not just a concept, a theoretical concept. So, Marluce, it is up to you. Do you have any additional thoughts to what we talked before, or should we start straight into the continuation of our discussion?
Uh, Thank you, Marcia, for this invitation and to continue our conversation. And when you were talking, I remember the first time that I was not a psychologist on that time. And the first time I started to read this, I don't know if it has an English translation, Ser Consciente,
Yeah, I don't believe it does. I have it in Portuguese as well. The conscious being would
the
be the
conscious,
literal translating
yeah,
to the title. Yeah,
of Joana de Angelis, né? The spirits
yeah,
of Joana de Angelis writing through Divaldo Franco. And this, so she started to bring these concepts, ego, self, and things. And this had a huge impact on me because I never heard about that. What is
hmm,
this spirit this woman is talking about? That's something that caused a very huge impact on my soul. And so I realized some years later, so this was the first impression I had. So many concepts that you start talking today, né? It seems a lot of, but in fact, what I understood after all is that Joanna is trying to help us to
yeah,
find out this, how to understand a kind of map of our
yeah,
soul. You
yeah.
know,
I love
each
that.
of us,
Yeah,
each of us has a map, so we look this map, but we don't realize really where we are, where we want to go, what
mhm,
this place means in my psychological life. So when he brings this kind of concept as ego, as self, as psyche, how is this dynamic that functions inside us? In fact, if I can bring another image to help us here,
yeah,
we are trying to discover this map, you know,
mhm.
because our ego, and when we are discovered this map, this is developing our self-esteem.
Ah,
So we are
beautiful. Yeah,
discovering new places, new, because we can go to a same place many times and
yeah,
have no kind of a different experience. But sometimes when we understand the history that is in this place, what this mean, what happened there. So I go to the same place, but I have a different perception. And this
yeah.
is happening with us all the time. This is how our self-esteem is constituted, is
Constituted, right? What was
constituted.
it made
Yes.
of? Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, my
That's
English is not
okay. It's your second language, and I admire you for that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So this is important for us.
yeah, yeah,
And many times we suffer because we don't understand this map.
yeah.
So
And
we are
I
so
wanna,
focused in going to somewhere that
yeah.
because the roads say you must go to there. This is
You
very
must turn
important for
right,
you.
and you're like, no, it doesn't feel because I've been there before. And I have to
Yes.
tell you, Miss Lucy, I was just talking to someone. This is, just as my thought process here. I was talking about a conflict that I was going through, right? A very deep, deeply hurtful conflict with a person, right? And this person knows me practically my whole life. And she said, there you go again. Oh, there you go again. You keep repeating the same type of conflict. And what you're saying really resonates to me. This once you know the map and you see that turning right, as the map tells us, is really to actually revisit something that has not been resolved, it makes so much more sense. So it's no longer there I go again, I have not learned my lesson. No, let's be kind to ourselves and look, I still need to exercise something within me, that the conflict is the trigger point for us to suffer, or whatever it is that comes to us. But go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, no, this is very important because our life, when we are thinking about how we became mature human being in terms of psychological terms,
Yeah.
is this capacity that we have to deal with these conflicts, with this. So when I go to some place, but there are many obstacles over there. So
Yeah.
what can we do? We can recalculate the route
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
the system do. Sometimes you have to go back, to come back and
Yeah.
check what I left there. So this is
Yeah.
a process, and but we can feel for that we fail because we are doing this, or we can feel, no, I'm looking in a different way for this experience. And most of the time, Marcia, these patterns that you were talking about are leading our life,
Yeah.
give us, and we don't realize.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
can we realize that we are being moved by old patterns that we don't need anymore when suffers comes?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we must have this posture, to pay attention, to look at ourselves, to look at our emotions, and,
Yeah.
and this we must do with love, with
Yeah.
care, not in a way that with judgment. No, we
Hmm.
are here to learn. And this
Yeah.
does not mean, I don't know how to say it in English, but in Portuguese we say this does not mean passar a mão na cabeça.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm now thinking what would be the equivalent in English, but what Marluce is trying to really say is to overlook the errors, right? The mistakes. You just like,
Yes.
oh, it's okay. No, it's not okay. There was a mistake, but with love, right? What did we learn from this mistake, and how do we learn? Marluce, what comes to my mind, another image on what you're saying. When we realize that we are reliving those old patterns, me with my conflicting uh, uh, relationship with different people, that it's several times in my whole lifetime or not, there is something there. But let's do that with care, with love. And the image that came to my mind, Marluce, is how we treat our young children,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they're learning, which is vital for them to learn to move, right? The muscles need to be developed, and they start to crawl. And in crawling, they are learning from a neurological perspective, movement, the ability to do things, but also, of course, strengthen those muscles until they start to get to a sense of balance. But boom, they come back, they fall, they go back to crawling until they're there again. But a mother and a father, whatever is your role, when you see the child doing those beginning of those movement, is with care and love. We see not with judgment, right? We don't see like, oh, you fell again.
Mm-hmm.
No, you fell again. Are you okay? And I think maybe that's what we need to do. Marcia, I'm going to be pretend that this is the person that noticed that I was reliving an old pattern. Marcia, are you okay? How does it make you feel? What have we learned from before? What can you do perhaps to overcome the obstacle, emotional obstacle, psychological obstacle, etc., that this conflict is leading you to suffer, right?
This, Marcia, makes me think that Jesus, in
Yeah.
that book, I don't know if there is an English translator as well, A Boa Nova.
Yeah, the good news. It has recently been published, and it's
Yes.
amazing in both Portuguese and English.
I think there was a moment where Jesus says to Peter,
Mhm.
Peter, today I want to say a lot of words that I don't know in English. O
That's okay.
amor, O amor não prescinde da verdade. Could you please translate it?
Yeah, the love cannot, what is it, prescinde, right? It's love cannot be before truth, right?
Love needs truth. You
Yeah,
know,
okay.
we
So it's not
cannot
outside of
you,
truth. Yeah,
we cannot love without face the truth.
yeah, yeah,
So, but there is a love way to face the truth. You know,
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
is why Joana de Angelis says in that book that I refer in the O Ser Consciente, the conscience
yeah,
being, huh,
yeah.
is that this conscience being does not judge himself,
Ah,
does not
beautiful.
justify himself, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
does
yeah.
not blame himself or inflict guilt in himself, but he discovers himself.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah. So
You
no
know,
blame,
this
no
is Joana
guilt,
de
no
Angelis'
judgment.
words.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Ah, love it.
So,
Yeah,
what this is to discover ourselves. This is a life process. You
yeah,
know, is to deal with this map that we received when we came to this life and
yeah,
with the reincarnation. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we are always choosing
yeah,
ways. Some many times we will choose not the best way, and that's okay because this
yeah,
is the way we learn
yeah.
in this
So
level of evolution that we are here.
yeah. So if you go back to what you brought forth last week, right, with the difference in the dynamic relationship between the psyche, the ego, the self, right? Yeah. If you think about ego-based self-esteem, is one that depends intrinsically on external factors. I
Mhm.
mentioned even before success, approval, appearance, productivity, even, right? I can only, and this is, it comes very strong to me as in my own aging experience where, talking about retirement and what about my entire identity focused on production, a society of production. So even that productivity, youth, etc. Um, and it's very interesting because that spiritual self-esteem, as you mentioned, is really rooted in being, right? And this is something that Jonah the Angels brings a lot to us, right? It is self-esteem rooted in being, not in doing or even having. And to do that, we must become I don't know if the best word would be centered, but very aware, and able, courageous even to recognize myself, yourself, all of us as a spiritual being in evolution. So, in response to this thought process, many of us feel inadequate, even even when everything seems right on the outside, right? I know that, and I keep thinking of Marluce. This is when I was quite young, and it was I was in college, and uh, we were in a circle, right, with this college professor, and he was talking about how we're feeling. It was really interesting. He was actually teaching about meditation and how to deal with the pressure of college in by being connected. And there comes the worst of the students who was suffering the most at the time. Oh my goodness, this is 40 years ago. This beautiful, not Lucy, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. And she was beautiful. She was tall. She was elegant, completely coiffed and dressed. And in my mind's eye, right, she had it all. And she felt so inadequate. So even with the if you're not, if you fall or not in the trappings of society of perfection, even that, even when you have it all, you may, I may, you may feel something is not quite right, and something is it needs to be wrong. It's not right, it's wrong, so we need to right ourselves. So I just wanted to maybe, when we could talk a little bit about the self-rejection. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? If we're here to learn, this journey is really a journey of learning, of understanding our patterns, right? Our repeated or not patterns, they're not random, they are very specific. We need to go through that. But how come, Marluce, we we face so much self-rejections? Can we talk about maybe, I think you talked about the self-discovery with no blame, no judgment, no guilt. Can we talk perhaps even about that unconscious guilt that we may have?
You are bringing a lot of complex aspects
Oh
of
my goodness.
our incarnation here.
Yeah, yeah,
First of all, what comes to my mind is that every experience we live here is very important to our spirit. So, for example, you talked about external achievements,
yes,
what the role demands from us. This is very important because this says you can do this. But the point is that when we put much more attention or put all the attention on this, and so we live with these external demands, but there is
yeah,
something inside us, our soul saying your life is much more than this. So at
yeah,
the eyes of the world, I can have everything that is considered a success. I can have this beauty, I can have intelligence, I can
yeah,
have money, I can have
true.
power, but my soul are not worried about that. These are just experience, that I have to what? To make me get in contact with my inner potentialities.
Yeah,
So when we reincarnation here, we brings a lot of things that are in our unconsciousness, as we were talking about last week. And
yeah,
many of us brings a lot of guilty in this
yeah,
unconsciousness. Why? Even if our ego, our conscience here now does not remind exactly or remembers exactly what we did, we have this feeling, and this exerts some pressure in our conscience.
that's
So we
right.
must, this is part of this map,
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
are dealing with. So
yeah,
if I pay, I said, now I'm feeling this guilty. Why? Where this is coming from? I separate myself from this guilty, and I can so deal with. This is a gold rule in psychological as
oh,
so,
yeah,
yeah, everything that is when I mixed with something I do not have the tools to deal with.
I see.
So,
Yeah,
this is when I start to asking who in myself, which part of myself is feeling this guilty or is feeling that is inadequate or
yeah,
is not, so I can deal with, yes, this is because we are not a block, we have
yeah,
many aspects in us because
yeah,
our evolution is not something uma linha
it's,
reta,
yeah. It's not a straight line,
straight,
right?
straight.
It's curved and with many
Yes.
detours. Yeah,
So some parts of me are okay with this
yeah,
self-esteem, other
yeah,
parts not. So I
yeah.
have parts of me that are very mature, the others that we are in the feeling like child.
Yeah, in our psychological infancy, if you will, right? It's like, oh, we're babies here and quite mature there. I love that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So we can think about in our emotions are very important
Hmm.
as this is not the best word, but I like to see the emotions as symptoms. What is
Yeah.
happening inside here?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for example, fear. If we're talking about fear, everybody feels fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, fear is a very important emotion in our evolution. Why?
Correct. Yeah.
Because it prevents us to put our life in danger.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there is fears that are not helping us today. So this fear that we feel that people will not love us, will not accept
Yeah.
us for what we are, this
Yeah.
fear to make mistakes. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to begin to question these fears. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. So
this
so
is
just
coming
to make
from
sure
this.
that I understand, right? And you alerted us. Emotions, we can look at it as symptoms to what parts of us are need to be comforted at a minimum, right? That need to be looked at and brought forth, a wound, if you will. So from that perspective, emotions can be seen as symptoms, just for this discussion here. And the example of fear, and I love fear because in I would say, um, right, animals, without fears there would not be enough giraffes or gazelles, etc., right? They're an animal that collectively behave to with fear to dictate what to do to avoid being eaten, attacked by lions, etc., etc. So fear is good. It is a necessary defense mechanism, but in our society today, and we're talking about today, 21st century, with so many technological and even pedagogical, right, intellectual achievements of mankind, why are fears, for example, and you mentioned rejection, perfectionism, really, instead of helping us, blocking us from growing?
Because this fear comes from this ego perspective.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
So fear is an emotion. The first emotion that human being has, Joanna de Angelis will understand in this way. But
Hmm.
this fear we are talking about here is when this comes from the way I get in touch with the reality. So this fear is subjective, ele é
Yeah.
subjetivado,
Yeah, yeah, I would say subjectivized, right? So it's a
subjectivized.
subjective way instead of objective way of looking into
And this
the
fear, so
yeah,
for example, I can have a fear that is that comes from my family, my education, or
yeah,
even with these contents that I have inside, that
yeah,
life is too dangerous,
yeah,
you know. So this is a way, this is a lens, né, like a glass that
yeah,
I
yeah,
perceive reality.
yeah,
So
yeah,
this will prevent me to have experience and to that are very
yeah,
important to my spirit. So
yeah.
sometimes our true self, our spirit,
Hmm.
wants to live different experience, and our ego is blocking this.
I
So
see.
how do
Yeah,
we do this? This
mm,
is why we should question
yeah,
ourselves, you know? So,
yeah.
for example, a very common fear, nah, to speak in public, as I'm
Yes.
doing here. Okay.
But I face it every single time. Yes.
Every single time we face
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
this is one part. We have to face it. That's okay
yeah,
to have this fear. I fear here to make mistakes, and I will make mistakes.
yes,
But
yeah,
what is moving us to be here? Is a very deep purpose, because we are talking about things that have very importance in our lives, has
I see.
meaning. So
Yeah,
many times we are able to overcome this fear because we can find a deep purpose, a
yeah,
meaning of this experience.
yeah,
So in this, our self, our spirit is saying, is guiding out this ego, né? And this is the relationship between ego and self, and say,
yeah,
go there, try yourself. I
yeah,
will be here helping
yeah,
you, you
yeah.
know?
My Lucy, my thought that came to my mind, and I would love for you to correct me if I'm in the wrong way to perceive. Could we say fear as a symptom? I love the concept, right? And then you bring back to if it comes from the ego, then we should all think about well, is fear as a defense mechanism helping me or blocking me from moving? And what comes to my mind as a similar, love to hear from you, is perhaps stress, right? We all go through stress in life, especially with the pressures to perform, to produce, to do something. And if you look from a is it helping me or is it blocking? I would say if I'm going to do an exam, a certification exam, let's say I want to be, I'm not, but I'm going to be certified in whatever profession, and the professional board requires us to demonstrate that we know so that you can perform, but without the stress of getting ready in the situation that is quite important. I love the word that you said. This is something that we deem as an important aspect of our lives. Without that stress to not perform, we would not study and prepare, right? So the closest we are, and I see as a triangle, almost as a mountain, this closer we are to that day of the exam, for example, the more stressed we are, and boom, we do the exam. We may pass, we may fail, it doesn't matter. But if we kept going, at some point the stress is a diminutive return, right? Diminishing return. You start to get stressed and get less out of the I need to study, I need to study, I need to prepare, that those stress is there, and it becomes a negative. And I keep thinking, perhaps, love to hear from you, that fears are there, like stress is good because it's leading to a certain type of behavior, right, to protect yourself, etc. But if the fear continues to grow beyond the need to protect yourself, for example, then it becomes almost pathological, diminishing return from the fear, to the point that what you said, public speaking. Oh, I'm nervous. So for me to diminish my nervousness, coming from fear of public speaking, I'm going to prepare, I'm going to read, I'm going to study, I'm going to do even meditation techniques, visualization, whatever it is that I need to be better or ease those fears of public speaking, just as an example. But if I don't, and I continue, then at the moment of being in front of a public or a camera or whatever is the channel, then I'm paralyzed, most likely. I'm unable to perform, which means it is blocking us from getting to the point that we need to be. Does this make sense?
Yes, sure. Because the great point is not to deny our emotions, is how we
Mhm.
deal with them. You
Mhm.
know, every emotion has a purpose.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
point is that this is the difficult. This is why Joana de Angelis help us when she talks about ego and self. You know, and
mhm.
I remember now when Jesus said a very wonderful psychological teaching when he said, "Meu jugo é leve."
Yeah. I have my the burden is really is light. It's not too
He's
heavy for all
light.
of us.
He's
Yeah, yeah,
So why this is a psychological teaching, you know?
yeah,
We
yeah,
have to face many things that are really difficult. For example, to
yeah,
go to an exam, nah? We
yeah.
study, we want this is very important to us. So
Mhm.
we must put our effort on this. The
Yeah,
point
that's the
is that
burden. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
this is important, okay?
yeah.
But if I, I do what I can do, what is in my hands to do. So this is the ability, the ego, to feel comfortable and feel and connect with humble,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
instead I can go until there. Over
yeah,
there, it's not me. So I
yeah,
can rely on this self, this spirit. So I do all I can do, and if it's I will pass in this exam, okay.
yeah,
If not,
yeah,
there is a purpose for this. So
yeah,
this is the balance. This is our part. Né? This is why some philosophy says that God needs man
yeah,
also, to be here. So I can do what belongs to man parts, not what belongs to God. And
yeah,
we became too stressed because we want to behave like gods, but
yeah,
we are not
yeah,
gods.
yeah. I love it. I love it.
So,
Yeah,
we go beyond the point,
yeah,
so this is how to balance it. I do
yeah,
what belongs to me, and I
yeah,
give to God what belongs to God. So,
yeah,
this is a mix of effort and trust.
yeah.
This is
So
because Jesus said the burden is light.
light. Yeah, you can
Do
do it.
what
We all
belongs
can
to
do it.
you. Do what
Yeah.
belongs to you.
Yeah. So when we think about just to start to wrap up our discussion here, right? The sense of self-rejection um, often comes or arises from that unconscious guilt, and it's okay for us not the map that you talked about. We need to understand, right, compartmentalize this immature or whatever that compartment holds guilt, and let's look into that it may be a past experience or may be linked to Marluce, like moral perfectionism, or even in the belief in reincarnation, an event that belongs to past life. So when we look into that, when just we are in touch with that vague feeling that something is wrong, let's look with care, with love. Why? And start to look at the purposeful in the map. And I love it. You brought it up, the exam from ego self. The ego pushes us to prepare to pass the exam. It's a material aspect of our lives, but we may not pass the exam even with all the preparation, because from an ego perspective, there's a lesson in there. Maybe it is humility, as you mentioned, but it may be something else that we need to fail. I often think of we, if you will, right, reversals of fortune, or a I'm an athlete and I eat everything well. I'm just really take care of this temple that is my body, and yet I become a victim of a terminal illness or a condition that is really difficult for me without everything that I've done, and I still do that. Maybe it's because the ego is pushing us to go through something within that experience. So the lesson here is self love, self compassion, to all of us, right? But I wanted to, Marluce, before before we say goodbye for today, maybe you can talk a little bit about the that presence of the inner critic as part of ego in this ego survival mode, right? Because Joanna, when she talks about self-esteem, she really describes that inner critic as that. So on one hand, fear, our fear says, "I'm not safe. I need to do something," and we can look at the lack of safety as our inner critic saying, I'm not enough, right? Maybe my inner critic stemming from my desire to be God, to be perfect, right? As in, there's something wrong with me. I indeed, I. I am ashamed, or I must have a flaw that I nobody can love me because there's a flaw within me. So that inner critic, those inner critic voices, especially if they're not listened objectively, like you said, the subjective, objective view of those inner critic, they can become quite powerful and really become the biggest obstacles to our growth, especially related to self esteem. Can we talk about it to wrap it up, our conversation today, if you don't mind?
This inner critic, our voice, these voices are very dangerous in our
Yeah,
process
yeah.
because it's another topic that we could talk other day. But
Yes.
it's difficult for us to love ourselves as we are.
Yeah,
And what we are beings, human beings, there in a process to become more consciousness of things,
yeah,
you know. So we have to pay attention on this. This happened. This is very important, Marcia. When these voices come and
yeah,
saying things like "you are not good enough," we can give another perspective.
yeah,
No, who is this voice that is talking to me?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
not identify ourselves with this,
yeah,
and this is because ego feels very insecure, and we have an ideal, and he has an ideal of how to be, but between the ideal and the reality there is a
yeah,
gap.
yeah,
The
yeah,
ideal is important. It's just a wide perspective, but it's not we have to deal with this reality. So ego must be able to deal with frustration. Yes,
yeah,
you are not the person you'd like to be, and
yeah.
that's okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, I keep thinking that it's the target, right? Maybe that
Yes,
idealized version of ourselves
yes.
is the target. We should all strive to be there, right? Going back to the analogy of the stress that we feel when we do an exam, without stress, what would we do? Nothing. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to study. I don't want to read. I
Mm-hmm.
want to do everything as normal. So without the stress that comes to us, that feeling the discomfort, we would not stop doing certain things to prepare so that we can achieve whatever we're doing. So let's think about that as the ideal. Maybe like those of us who've played with, I don't know, bow and arrow. If you're shooting an arrow to a target, or any type of sport that you have a target, the center, and you need to hit there, and oftentimes you won't, but it takes practice to be able to one day get to the ideal target, the ideal state that we need to be. So I think, Marlucy, it is almost as if the process of practicing to achieve the targeted ideal state, if you will, it's also about self-acceptance, not as, oh, I don't care, or
Mm-hmm.
indulgent, right? I don't need to do this because all is good.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can think about this compassionate realism, right, which is a state of recognizing where we are in our state of evolution. If I am a 1 year old and I'm still struggling with balance, one step is a great outcome,
Yeah.
versus if I am a dancer that is looking for, I don't know, gold medal in Olympics of this type of dance, that falling becomes one step is not enough, right? So it's that, where are we in our journey, and being good to ourselves, accept. So
Yes.
instead of what's wrong with me, let us all ask, what in me is asking me to love and to heal?
And to be responsible for us.
Yeah.
You know, this
Yeah.
is the great point. I must take responsibility for my
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
okay, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I am not a victim. I can. God trust us, you
Yeah.
know. This is when we don't believe in it,
Yeah.
you
I
know
love it.
that. So let's take responsibility for our lives, but in a light way, you know, without a burden, and in
Yeah.
recognizing this demands us the
Yeah.
ego to be humble, you know, to
Yeah.
be patient, and said, okay, that's okay, you made this huge mistake today, let's start again, you know,
Yeah.
let's reflect on this mistake, let's look in this map of our soul and say, well, you were there and you'd like to rapidly go over there. No, you cannot do this. You
Yeah.
must do it slowly, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
I love
okay.
it. Yeah.
Yes, and we are not alone here because the self perspective, the self esteem that comes from our spirit says we are not alone, you
Yeah.
know? And we have
Absolutely.
invisible friends helping us, né? We
Yeah.
have friends here, né? In this incarnation, and
Yes.
that's great.
Yes. Yeah, they're here to support us.
Yes.
Lucy, we have to stop our conversation
Yeah.
today. Here comes an invitation for us to come back when you have a chance to continue.
Mhm.
This is beautiful. I really appreciate it. And maybe we can close with the thought that we talked a lot about fears and self-rejection that leads to a lower self-esteem, and let's look at it not as a personal, oh, what can I say, defect, a flaw, but more of as a misunderstanding of our own identity. What we are talking about here is how we often confuse, because it's easier to see from a material lens, right? And we confuse the ego with the self drivers. So let's just do this. Let's remember who we truly are, but of course, look at the map and not only who we truly are, but where we are in relationship to where we need to go, what we want to go, right? So let us look for opportunities to heal, to recharge our gas if you're driving a car to where you need to be, and rest and refuel and heal, if you will, gently, progressively, naturally, so that we can understand that the more we explore our with awareness, right? That where we are today in this map, um, then it we achieve peace, we achieve meaning through daily choices, through emotional regulation, ah, forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and the other, and of course having a habits that are quite conscious, because that the spiritual self-esteem cannot be built overnight, right? It is done every single time we choose truth, right? We talk about love cannot exist without truth. Truth over self-judgment. Marluce, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate our conversations. And for all of you, if this is the first time you're listening to our program, we in the Psychology and Spirituality program, we offer weekly talks, all of them stemming from teachings, the works by Joanna de Angelis. And I hope you gain as many insights as I have from our conversations today. Thank you, Marluce. Thank you, all of you. And thank you, our sponsors, Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil. I always like to reference what is AMI Brazil. It's the Brazilian arm of the International Medical Spiritist Association. So long, everyone, and see you next week. Bye, Marluce.
Bye bye. Thank you, Marcia.